Okay.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the High Performance Driving Seminar. Some of you were on the instructor seminar last week, and this is Peter Krause, part 2, but Peter's going to talk all about driving this week, and we're all looking forward to that. A couple of quick housekeeping items. Those of you on Zoom are muted. You can certainly unmute to ask questions, later on we are going to have time for questions. If you're on Zoom and your real name isn't showing, I'd ask that you fix that so that we know who's on. And when we do get to questions, you can unmute or you can use the Zoom raise your hand button, or you can use the chat on Zoom. And for those of you on YouTube, the chat is open. And I see some of you saying hi already on YouTube, which is great. So, please plan to type your questions in. And if you have questions as Peter's going along, type them in. And if it's appropriate to where we are, we'll interrupt Peter and ask the question. Otherwise, we'll pose it at the right time later on. So we're going to try to keep this as interactive and informal as we can, given the technology that we're having to deal with. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Tom to get us started.
Good afternoon, everyone. We've got a great season set up for the DE, and I won't go through each one of the events. You certainly could read them yourself, but the first one I want to talk about is the pit race event. That is brand new for NNJR. I know many of you have not been there. Some of you have. I've heard from some of you, but what we're going to do is, since many of us have not been there previously, we're going to have the first run of the weekend, or Monday, Tuesday. The first run on Monday is going to be an open track. So everyone in helmets and seatbelts and all that, but there'll be no passing. It'll be run under yellow, and basically run it at about 50–60%, and let everybody kind of get a feel for the track before having to get out there and start looking in your mirrors to let people buy you. We did that at Summit Point last year, since we hadn't been there in about 12 years, and it worked out real well. On the the Lime Rock event, you notice it's Lime Rock 1.5 and Lime Rock 2 solo. The 1.5 is an instructed event, which will be the first day and half of the second day. The Lime Rock 2 is going to be from 12 to 6 on the 15th, and that will be an unmuffled event. So those of you who are worried about the 88 dB noise limitation, that will not be in play for that afternoon. So if you haven't been there for a while, this would be a great opportunity. They only do it on Tuesdays, and they only allow so many of those per year. So we were lucky to get that. On the Mid-Ohio event, for those of you who are with us in 2019, it was an event that was run in conjunction with the PCA club race. That will not happen this year. It'll be strictly a DE. And we will run it in conjunction with the Mid-Ohio region, PCA, but it'll be a straight DE. And Bill, on the next slide, if you notice, we'll have the 2 Watkins Glen events. The first one, please take note of that. It has been in July forever, but we got bumped this year. It's been pushed off to August. I've been promised that this is just a one-off, that next year we'll be back in July, but we'll see. I've arranged for hotel discounts for all the Lightning and the T-Bolt events and Mid-Ohio. I haven't sent those links out yet. I'm still waiting for contracts for the New Jersey, but they should be on my in my inbox no later than tomorrow. So look for those in your inbox. Got some pretty good discounts in both of those locations. At New Jersey Motorsports Park, there's probably about 4 or 5 hotels. Mid-Ohio, we have 2 different hotels. Since we are starting the season, just as a reminder to please check your seatbelt dates. You know, they do run out. They don't last forever. And helmets. The 2010s are no longer allowed to be used. So 2015 and the new 2020s, you'll have to have. PCA has a rule: if there's 3 dates out, the latest, the furthest one away will be deleted, and so no longer valid. And so it's really a safety issue. You know, these helmets, they don't last forever. The material breaks down. So it's a good idea to change it. Some sanctioning bodies make you change them every 5 years. So we have 10 years on these. And speaking of safety, you know, tech is an essential part of our safe and serious fun, with the emphasis on safe. The tech crew is run by volunteers, essentially NNJR members like you who have an interest and are willing to get up a little early on the day of the event. It's a great way to get to know club members, and even better way to support the club by getting the cars through the event inspection quickly and efficiently. So Peter Miller, who's taken over as a tech steward this year, he's asked me to let you all know that he's looking for some volunteers to work tech. And if you haven't done it, it's actually a lot of fun. And so if you're interested in volunteering, you could send an email to tracktech@nnjr-PCA. You could look on the website for this, and that will go to Peter Miller, or send me or Bill an email if you have our emails, and we'll get the information to Peter. And Bill, that's about all I have for that.
Okay, Tom, thank you very much. So before we get to Peter, I want to kind of reinforce what I've called the driving challenge. But before I do that, let me just quickly go through the chief's priorities for this upcoming season. We want to focus on improving on-track driving, especially in demanding situations. And that's been an ongoing objective. We want to accelerate learning, more and better ways for everyone to learn. Today is a big part of that. And obviously we want to maintain and improve the fun factor, which is why we all come to the track in the first place. So you're going to see us continue for this season, the run group mentors that we started last year. We're going to continue to add information to the website. We're going to continue the Zoom classes before events that include turn by turn. We're going to continue to find ways to make first-time drivers feel special. And last week, we talked about some additional instructor tools and assistance, which I won't talk about today. What I do want to talk about today briefly is my challenge to each of you on this call, regardless of whichever group you happen to be in. If you're a solo driver, in blue, white, maybe black, I hope, read the article in the February Porsche Force, the electronic version. And if you don't have that, or you want a copy of it, send me an email. But the challenge that I posed in that article was, are you taking advantage of classes and other learning resources? And I'm not going to go into depth. I'm just going to put that out there. For student drivers, there's a challenge for student drivers that's in the upcoming March issue. So if you're a student driver, that challenge is how well prepared will you be for your first DE in 2021? And if you want to get a pre-production copy of that, just email me and I'll send that to you. For advanced drivers, the challenge is in the article some of you, I hope many of you have already read, called Missing the Obvious. So the question is, are you missing the obvious? So there's a challenge for each of you there based on your experience level that, that among other things, refers to the wealth of resources that have been created on the website and on YouTube over the last few years. So for new drivers or newer drivers, there's information on basics and a whole driver's manual. And for everyone, there is a whole list of resources, track maps, turn by turn, videos with the turn by turn, the slides for all the classrooms we've done from last year, recorded slides, recordings of expert speakers, and more. So I'm not going to spend any time on any of this except to point out that I've created here a list of these things. And in these slides are links to all of the things that I'm talking about. So if you want to be able to get to anything that I'm showing you on the screen today, you need to send me an email, and I'd like you to do that anyway so that I can send out a survey after this event. But you'll have one spot you can go to click on any of these resources and go straight to the topic. There's the videos, like the one that we're doing today. Again, I have links to all of those for you right here. We're going to continue the classes this year. There's the list of topics. I'm not going to go through them, but some of these are updates. Some of these are brand new. And there are our expert speakers. Ross Bentley spoke to us last year. He's going to speak to us again in April. Dennis Mascio in December had great tips. Shane Lewis had some good driving advice. Tim Pappas, Hurley Haywood, and of course, we'll have Peter's recording available for you after today as well. So lots of resources, even more of them. There's a whole piece on deliberate practice that was in Porsche Forest last year. If you don't know what that is, please check it out. There's a piece on the website called Using Video to Improve Your Driving. There's a piece on data. There's a whole bunch of topics. The last one I want to mention is the run group advancement criteria. A lot of people ask, how do I get from fill in the blank, yellow to blue, blue to white, whatever? Well, the answer to that is there, but even if you don't use it for that, it's a great self-evaluation tool. If you want to know how you're doing in blue, or black or whatever group, just check out the advancement criteria list and see how you're doing against that list of criteria. So I hope everyone that, whether you're on YouTube or Zoom, will send me an email either now or after this, and I will send you a link to the slides that have all of these links to all of these resources. And that means I'll also be able to send you the survey link for today's seminar. So let me leave you with the question, are you up for the challenge that I posed at the beginning? So think about that as you're getting ready for the upcoming DE season. So with that, I'm going to put up a poll, and we're going to do a quick check of, there are at least, I think there's 2 questions here. So the first one is, how many DE events have you attended? And obviously this won't work for those of you on YouTube, but it'll work for those of you on Zoom. And what run group were you in at your last DE? And so I'm going to give you another few seconds to fill that in. And we have as many or more people on YouTube. So whether this is representative of everybody on, I don't know, but it'll at least tell us about the whatever number of people we have on Zoom right now. So 5 more seconds and we'll end the poll. Okay, it looks like we have a mix, which is what I thought. So here's the results. We have a lot of people on who've driven a lot. We have a number of instructors on from last week. Then we have a mix of experience, which is kind of what we expected. So I'm going to close that. If that's still on your Zoom screen, you can X that out. So let me get the screen back up. While I'm doing that, Tom, you want to introduce Peter?
I will, but first I'd like to talk a little bit about the track tour that we're going to have at Lightning.
Yes.
For those of you who don't know, in the past we've had an intro to DE, and it was pretty well involved, with instructors being in cars and what have you. And because of COVID, however, we decided not to do that this year. But we didn't want to leave the newbies out, so we're going to have what's called the track tour. At the first Lightning event, the first day, the Saturday, anyone who would like to see what it's like to drive on the track, they could come down to the event. You could sign up on Motorsports Reg. It's just have to sign up, and so we get a head count. You're going to give a $20 donation that will go to charity. And if you're there about 11 o'clock, we're going to have a meeting, give you kind of the lay of the land of what's going to happen. And during lunch, we're going to have a lead follow. We'll have an instructor go out, lead a group of 2 or 3 people who want to just try to see what it's like to go on a track. It's going to be parade lap speed, so maximum of 60 or 65 miles an hour. No helmets necessary. But you kind of get a feel for what's going on the track, what it's like, kind of see what's happening in the paddock. And if you want, you could, head down in the morning and be home by dinner time. So it's a real low impact on the weekend if you so desire. But if you want to stay and hang around the whole weekend and see what it's like, you're more than willing to. You're more than able to. So if you know anybody who wants to try, you have a family member or a friend who say, gee, I'd like to try that. A perfect opportunity to just stick their toe in the water. So again, if you know anybody, just direct them to Motorsports Reg. If they have any problems with that, get a hold of myself or Craig or Bill, and we could help you get on there. So now to the main event. For those of you who don't know our speaker, let me just say that, give you a little bit of background. He was selected by Bobby Rahal as his lead coach for his Legends of Motorsports Racing Series. He's the chief instructor of the North Carolina region, SCCA, SVRA, the BMW Club Racing School Southeast, and many other organizations. He has over 40 SCCA national, regional, NASA, and historic wins at VIR alone. But Ross Bentley basically summed it all up best, and I quote, "Peter Krause is simply one of the best driver coaches there is." Please welcome Peter Krause.
Great. There we go. Thank you, Tom. You make me blush. You make me blush every time. I want to welcome everybody here. Just a shout out to Chuck Price, who I see sitting back, kicking back. Chuck and I have had a lot of fun at VIR. I am currently in the second floor of the timing tower at VIR during a Chin Track Days event. So you will hear the V8 powered VAC Motorsports M3 Thunder by. You will hear several cup cars and a bunch of club sports. And if you see my head move very quickly in this direction, it's because I'm watching turn 3 because I've heard some tires squealing and I'm got the ghoul factor going. So just really want to tell you how much I appreciate you tuning in today, and thanks to Bill and particularly to Tom for reaching out and asking me to address NNJR, their fine instructor corps and their participants and members. One of the things that is a lot of fun to me, and I like this slide because it says driver performance analyst. I am not a coach per se. I do coach people, which I think is a verb, but I am first and foremost, a driver performance analyst. I've worked with novice drivers all the way to multi-time Sebring, Daytona, and Le Mans winners. I've been fortunate enough to work with a world driving champion, a former F1 world driving champion. I only say this because what I do is I measure what people do, and I share with them and engage them in a conversation that allows us to decide what to do next. That is really what my job is, to distill mountains of information down to one or two things that are the lowest hanging fruit for the very next session. When I started my business, let's go to the next slide, and I have a varied background in the fact that I was a professional mechanic for 25 years. I had the largest independent Ferrari and Alfa Romeo repair facility between DC and Atlanta, and enjoy working on the cars I prepared and transported and supported. A lot of historic race cars, some fairly significant historic race cars for a long time, and sold my business in 2007 to do this full time. While I was working in my garage, I was an HPDE right seat instructor. I did a lot of classroom instruction for car guys and various regions for the BMW Car Club of America and other groups. And one of the things that I thought was really important, I'm a geek. I like to build computers and do all kinds of things and mess with cars. And so the sort of nascent data and video logging technology that started adopting GPS as the basis for measuring speed and location on a track, starting around 20 years ago with race technology, piqued my interest, and I got involved in that. So really, though, for the last 14 years, my full-time job has been working one-on-one with club level, track day, and HPDE drivers. I have a teaching facility here, a 1,200 square foot facility with simulators and plasmas on the wall. Here at VIR, I used to travel 200 days a year to racetracks throughout North America. I've spent the better part of the last 40 years at the racetrack. And I think a lot of the challenges that we have as drivers are universal, whether you're talking to Patrick Long or George Bergmeister, or you're talking to a yellow group student who has been doing a lot of homework and research and reading the Skip Barber book, Going Faster by Carl Lopez and a bunch of people. The challenges are the same. How do you go faster without adding more risk? And that's been a great interest of mine. And I've really not lost my enthusiasm for it. I have lost my enthusiasm for travel and overnight stays in Hampton Inns. So I don't do that anymore. If people want to work with me, they need to come to VIR, and I'm busy here generally between 6 and 9 days a month. Next slide. The best part about this whole thing is learning. And I think the greatest resource that Northern New Jersey region and very few regions make the commitment to provide the learning resources to their members that NNJR does. Bill asked me to emphasize that for first-time drivers, the March 23rd Zoom presentation will provide a great deal of background information on getting on track and how to approach the first weekend. I also was reminded that it was important to remember that performance levels of drivers vary tremendously, both in, green group, yellow group in particular, blue group, and then, of course, white, red, and green. Not everybody learns at the same rate. I think it is very important for all of us to understand that different people progress at different rates of speed and competence. So it is very, very important as a student of the sport, and I consider all of you colleagues, this is not an information download. This is a conversation between a couple of people that have a common challenge, and that is, how do you go quicker without adding more risk? Don't ever take anything for granted. It is so easy to say that just because somebody is a white group student, that they don't need to have a right seat driver or instructor. It's important to realize that you're not done learning. It is super, super important. I mean, I know a majority of people progress sometimes by a simple, overambitious move on the racetrack, where somebody goes a little bit quicker into the corner, they get the car slowed down, they stay on the pavement, and they go, wow, I didn't realize I could do that. So it is important that just because somebody is in a yellow group or blue group, that they are not necessarily yet ready to grow to the next level or adopt another skill set execution. But it is important that you exchange ideas and experiences and really talk to one another, because no one person can capture all of what knowledge is needed in order to progress. Stay hungry for learning. I always enjoy, the reason why I'm in this business is because almost everybody who drives on the racetrack and everybody who does DEs and instructs, you learn more by instruction than you do by giving instruction sometimes, than by learning and reading and following books. When you're trying to explain a concept, a very advanced concept to a driver, it's important to work through the mechanics of that. So on to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about the idea that, let's see, I have just a couple of mottos, and a lot of you who were on last weekend will have heard all of this, but I do think it's important enough to repeat. My motto is the best execution of fundamental skills. I think a lot of people are shooting for lap times, especially in higher run groups, as an indicator on whether or not there is an improvement or not in their best execution of fundamental skills. Problem is, a lap time is a very large measure. Most drivers are basically making command decisions, control input decisions dozens of times a lap. So it's really, really important. The best execution of fundamental skills means if you can improve the quality of every individual driver control input, you can go faster with less effort and less risk. So the best execution of fundamental skills should guide you forward. And by that, I mean, when it comes time to commit to throttle, commit to throttle. When it comes time to turn the car in, turn the car in. When it comes time to slow the car in a high speed, longer straight line braking zone, commit to brakes. Don't dilly dally. That's Ross Bentley and I, who I'm going to have dinner tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about this, and he's going to tell me about dilly dallying. And dilly dallying is when you coast or when you don't otherwise commit to a control input. It's important to have consistency, not only in the speed at any given point on the racetrack, but the car placement, the lateral placement for every foot you travel on the track through the length of a lap is very, very important. Control input, speed, and amplitude. People say, well, why are you talking so much about control inputs? It's just brakes, gas, and steering, right? And I'm saying, well, it's not only how much you turn into a corner, but how quickly you turn into a corner. And so you can split these control inputs into finer and finer degrees. And, it's all in degrees, as they say. So consistency in speed, car placement, and control input and amplitude are super, super important for drivers as they begin shooting tighter groups of speed and lap times. Practice deliberately. Add speed incrementally. I think a lot of people try to go too fast in the slow stuff, and they try to go too slow, where they end up going too slow in the quicker stuff. So in order to reduce the amount of risk, really drive deliberately, practice deliberately, pick very identifiable landmarks, not only at the track level, but at the eye level and above, so that you can see around the car that is in front of you. It is super, super important to add that speed incrementally and to practice deliberately. I think when I started my coaching business, I had a very good friend of mine who was another HPDE instructor, a very good reputation, super guy, big wheel in the BMW club, and one of my best friends, Holland Hale. And he told me, he said, you've got to be crazy if you think you are going to start a business helping DE drivers and ask them for money that people are going to otherwise get for free, that information. And I listened to him and I believed him. But one of the reasons why my business has thrived is because I just drill down tighter and tighter and tighter. And the idea of balancing risk versus reward, making absolutely sure a majority of the people that I work with are between 40 and 70 years old. They're generally high net worth individuals. They're professionals. They have a family that doesn't necessarily like what they're doing. So whatever we can do to make this thing safer, the better off we are. So I see a poor little BMW being towed off, but no damage, doesn't look like. So anyway, the overtaking car, one of the things that we talk about a little bit, this picture in this high performance driving seminar slide is great. It is a Racekeeper video of turn 1 at Watkins Glen, one of my favorite tracks of all time. And it shows you the serrated concrete next to the asphalt immediately after the last good paving job. And you can see the corner speed and the lateral G's and the last lap time and the next lap time. But this whole idea of balancing risk versus reward is important. And the only way to do that is to add speed incrementally and gradually. We talked a little bit about this last week, but the overtaking car is always responsible for the safe pass. Now, why would an overtaking car always be responsible? Because the overtaking car is the only car that can see both cars. Yesterday, I believe we were driving the North Course, and a GT4 Club Sport and a GT3 street car touched at the very top of the hill at the North Course yesterday. And it was because the GT4 drove around the outside of the GT3 and reassumed the line without clearing the car that it was passing. So this was an avoidable accident. And so for that reason, it's always important to remember overtaking car is always responsible for the safe pass. And the development of 360 awareness, being able to track objects in your orbit around your car, is really, really important. Let's take a look at the next slide. So part of what we were going to talk about today was learning a new track. And learning a new track is super important because the same good practices in learning a course can be transferred from track to track. When I am learning a new track and recommending to other people who are learning a new track, the first thing I do is find out where the ingress or coming back into the pit lane, where does that exist? And am I in danger when I return to the pits? Here at VIR, normally there's a track out radius onto the pit straight from turn 17. And if you decided to cross the track and get in, find the ingress for the hot pit lap, you could conceivably cross traffic and run into a jam. So you need to know where the ingress is. You need to know where the egress, how you can exit the track, and figure out where the track goes before you start turning laps. Super important to go slow. I think everybody tries to go a little bit too quickly. One of the things that NNJR is planning for pit race, sort of track familiarization laps, are going to really pay off, because this is the time you note all of the worker stations and you note the emergency vehicles and where they're normally stashed. Sometimes on a big track like VIR, I will see a wrecker or a fire truck on the far side of the course and on the near side of the course. The other thing that I'm looking for is fence cuts. A lot of large famous tracks like Watkins Glen and here at VIR are required by the FIA, when they are certified for grade 2, to have bright fluorescent sections of Armco painted for drivers to quickly find shelter behind the opening of the fence. So when you see that at Watkins Glen, note that on your out lap and exploratory lap. So not just learning a new track, but refamiliarizing yourself with old tracks. Super important to do these things. The number one thing that people need to do before they try to go fast on a new track is to commit to memory the order and the severity of the corners. I know a lot of drivers who have gotten befuddled, who at Sebring mistook turn 10 for turn 13 because they look very similar and they are in close proximity, but yet one of the corners can be taken a full 10 miles an hour faster than the other one. And if you transpose those two corners, it's easy to fall off. So it's very, very important to commit to the memory and the order and the severity of the turns. Obviously, we talk a lot about utilizing the full width of the road unless there is a compelling reason not to. There are a lot of people that are sloppy with their lateral placement of the width of their car. And so it is really, really important. I know, and I've watched Matt Muller drive a lot. And he does utilize the full width of the road unless there is a compelling reason not to. And he can make a more direct, succinct, and effective path to the next control input by utilizing that full width of the road. Super important to touch every inside curve. You don't need to murder it. You don't need to run over it. You don't need to slam it, but you do need to touch it. You need to rub it. You need to nuzzle it. This whole idea of touching every inside curve gives you an extra safety margin that allows you to traverse better. The last thing is keep your eyes moving. Keep them up, keep them turning. I think a lot of people sometimes, as they go faster and add speed, allow their vision to narrow and to fall. And that is really hard not to do, but very, very important. Keeping your eyes moving, formulating landmarks at track level, which would indicate paint or curbing changes or curb cuts, eye level, which is corner worker stations, other drivers, areas of pavement degradation, and above, so that you can see what affects adversely the car that is in front of you closely, so that you aren't caught out or surprised by the driver in front. So let's go ahead and look at the best practices for improving safety. A little bit of this is a bleed over from the last time, but the best practices for improving safety and improving safely, i.e. going faster without incurring more risk, it is central to improve those individual skill executions, make them the best you possibly can. Also, I think a lot of people try to bite off more than they can chew. I know a lot of people who review their information, decide on 3 or 4 things that they need to fix the next session, go out, and because they've tried to remember too many things, forget all of what they were trying to work on. So keep it simple, targeted, and especially on larger tracks and tracks that you're new to, divide the track up into pieces and give hyper focus to portions of the track in your morning session, your first afternoon session, and then put it together at the end of even the second day. Don't try to do the perfect lap until you take apart each piece and perfect each piece. If you ever go to the Nürburgring or Spa, some of these large continental courses, you have to do that because there's no way that you can remember what's coming up next all the time. So use the simple measures to track progress. Are you more consistent? Can you raise speed without getting sloppy? Super important to do that. I'm reminded constantly of Ross Bentley's advice. You know, I'll talk a little bit about this later, but I have a Northern New Jersey region PCA driver here who I am having a lot of fun with. He has made tremendous progress. He was good when he started. He's been here before. The guy does 70 to 75 track days a year. He's trying to make up for lost time. But he stopped me in the middle of our second debrief and he said, whoa, whoa, whoa. He said, this is like drinking from a fire hose. And I said, yes, so what I'm going to do is slow it down. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. That is Ross Bentley's favorite explanation to me, how to begin to absorb complicated and multifaceted concepts on how to drive quicker. So break it down, break everything down, the last thing I want to talk about this business of highly targeted, not only geographic focus, but skill execution focus. So one of the things that I'm working with this driver is I'm asking him to accelerate fully to the point where he decides to brake. So instead of infecting his mind with the idea of a brake point, where's my brake point? Where's my brake point? I mean, he's going 150 miles an hour in a 991 GT3, and he's worried about, all the way down the pit straight going, where do I brake? Where do I brake? Where do I brake? So I said, no, let's turn that on its head and say, I want you to accelerate at least until your left shoulder is next to the first brake marker. And then I want you to make a quick transition from throttle to brake as quick as you can without upsetting the car. And when you apply the brake, I want you to push harder, as if someone was spinning 6 inches off the front of your bumper cover. I want you to utilize fully the massive capabilities of your car. And I want you to have a high, consistent deceleration rate through that long brake zone. Then I want you to focus on coming off the brake, where and how fast you come off the brake. And he said, wait a minute. He said, I thought we were talking about braking. That's one thing. I said, no, it's 5 things. The execution of braking is 5 individual skill executions. And so to get better, each one of those 5 executions needs study, practice, and continual improvement in execution. So that is, I'm just sharing with you a technique that I used this weekend with my friend Bruce Grobman, who I have spent three of the last 4 days with. And he talked my ear off and I've talked his ear back off. And he has chopped 6 seconds off of the time that he was doing his last event and started doing this one. And he hasn't been off the track, and he hasn't made a mistake, and he's not been in any danger. And yet he continually improves because we focus on 1 or 2 things each session. And you can do that too. Next slide, please. So the most common opportunities for improvement, people ask me all the time, and I must say Bill and Tom asked the same question. They say, look, he said, can you share with us some of the most common mistakes you see driver's ed, especially intermediate solo and advanced solo drivers, once the instructor is out of the car, they're functioning on their own, they're self-validating, even red group drivers, instructors. When I started my coaching business, I thought a majority of the people I was going to work with were yellow and blue students. And I would ride in the car, or I would not ride in the car as they progressed and were graduated to solo run groups. And then we would use and look at data and video together when they could pay 100% attention to what we were talking about, and we would engage in a conversation. But my business went in a different direction right away. Right away, the first big group that called me were instructors. And then the next big group that called me were advanced solo black drivers and white group drivers. And the reason why was because they wanted, a lot of them had heard so many different ways to do particular things that they wanted clarification. They just wanted to talk to somebody who had experience with all of these things that they had heard, and to try to sort out in their mind what is the valid, tested, best practice approach. And so I do a lot of that. I share a lot of those best practices with the drivers that I work with. And some of that is answering the question, what are the most, instead of saying mistakes, I'd rather say, what are the most common opportunities for improvement? You know, where is the lowest hanging fruit? And the number one is trying to go too fast in the slow parts and too slow in the fast parts. How I mean by that is, if the wheel is, I see Chuck smiling, if you are trying to go quicker, you naturally push. And sometimes people push to go a little too quick into slow corners, which causes the car to wash out, and they have to wait on throttle. And when they wait on throttle, they can't optimize their exit and their subsequent speed down a straight. So it's a double whammy. Not only are they slow through the corner, they're slow off the corner and down the straight. So you have to, in the slow corners, and I define slow corners by corners less than 55 miles an hour. I define slow corners by asking people to control their speed going into slow corners and really be accurate with the car placement. Make absolutely positively sure that you rub up against the curbing and get the car pointed in the direction you want it to go before you begin to progress and go to wide open throttle. A lot of people, because they're in cars that go so fast, are braking early. Then they release the brake early because they realize they're going too slow before the corner entry. Then sometimes, heaven forbid, they go back to power and they add steering input, which in a rear engine car and even a mid-engine car will lift weight off the nose and create the understeer they are trying to avoid. So by going too fast into the slow parts, you can really pay a big penalty. So the main reason why people are going too fast into slow parts is not necessarily because they're throwing it in there. It's because their whole brake period, or their braking portion of the speed adjustment required to go from going faster in the straight to slow at the apex, is inconsistent. When we are accelerating fully, our foot is fully on the floor. You can't go anymore. The wheel is straight or near straight, and your foot is all the way down on the floor. There's no equivocation. There's no moderation. That's what you do. Through most corners, as people become comfortable, through most corners, people are within a narrow speed window. Where the big difference between good and great is the speed from turn into apex, and how soon from the apex on the driver can complete a continuous and uninterrupted progression to wide open throttle. The throttle is your Yoda. Your goal is, how soon can I finish the progression to wide open throttle? Intermediate, advanced solo drivers, even instructors, often accelerate part throttle and pat themselves on the back prematurely and say, I'm on throttle. But they've got to wait for the car to complete the radius of the turn and see open road ahead before they can complete the throttle. And what do? They whack it. So they're part throttle for a long period of time, and then they whack it. And then if the car is loaded up, the car steps out, the nannies come in, and people go, scratch their head and say, what happened? What happened? Okay? So the idea here is squeeze the throttle like the trigger of a gun, because these big cars are powerful like big guns. They really are. But that inconsistent braking performance, I had said, when you go to wide open throttle, you're flat on the floor. The problem is that we all brake at a different level because we all have a different level of anxiety and fear. And so without braking to the capability of the car, we are just guessing. And we don't want to guess because we don't want to be inconsistent. And so first, hone the deceleration, get the braking done. If the throttle is on too early, if you've got to wait to finish the corner, let's move the braking zone in. I'm not asking you to brake later. I'm asking you to finish braking later. As you gain speed, the most common thing I see is car placement goes to hell again. People overshoot a corner. If you miss the same apex for a second time in consecutive laps, you got to back it down. You've got to move the braking zone back, or you've got to get the car wound up so that it will follow your directions when you turn the wheel. So most common opportunities for improvement, trying to go too fast in the slow parts, and you're going too slow in the fast parts. If the wheel is straight or near straight, fully commit to throttle. Inconsistent braking performance, get that car slowed down. Commit to the brakes. Use the brakes. Throttle on too early in a longer corner, well, move the end of braking closer to the apex and treat the apex as an apex area instead of a point. Lastly, if you find yourself getting sloppy and missing apices and running wide at the exit, fix it. Because if you practice errors, they will become part of your routine. Next slide, please. So this is not the data part. This is an overview of tools that drivers can use to quantify objectively their performance. I think right seat instructors can provide the most information in the shortest period of time with immediate feedback to a novice driver. I think a lot of times when drivers are graduated to a solo run group, or have been doing this for a very long time, they lose the ability to know what to do next, to know even where to look next for improvement. One of the things that I think is really important is something as simple as a video camera, a GoPro, Harry's lap timer, anything, something that you can review what you did and see what's going on. I worked as a skip barber instructor for on and off for 10 years. I went to skip barber in Lime Rock in 1985. It was my first professional driving school. Bruce McGinnis was the chief instructor, and he beat me about the head and shoulders. And it was a seminal experience for me. It helped me really figure out what I wanted to do, which was to work with drivers, and besides fixing cars. And when I sold my shop in 2007, I said, what do I want to do more than anything else? It's work with drivers. The problem is that in HPDE, there are a lot of people that are that have their own spin on things, that think that have a particular comfort level in a particular car, and when they're thrown in a different car, they're not comfortable. The march of technology is the cars are all about technology now. And the younger drivers who are coming into this sport are very facile with technology. It doesn't mean you have to adopt technology hook, line, and sinker. But if you look at a few simple measures, you can really make an objective valuation on the merits of one approach through a particular section of the track versus the merits of another approach, very clearly defined. So we're not using the stopwatch anymore. We're not using the radar gun to look at exit speeds. Most of these cars, this beautiful 718 GT4 Club Sport, and I am a huge fan of these cars, of the 981 Club Sport and the 718 Club Sport, as one of the ideal track tools to do this thing and hone your craft. The safety aspect is a big part of it, but also the information that is recorded in the car for playback, and the ability to get information out where a person's foot is at any given point on the gas, on the brake, how fast are they turning the steering wheel, and also how much of the force is acting on the car, how much of a percentage of the force is acting on the car are you actually using at any given time. So the integrated added performance information for both real-time feedback while you're in the car on the track is important. And some people would say lap timer is important. Well, a lap timer really doesn't tell you anything except this big sum total of all these decisions you made in the car. If you use something called predictive lap timing, and we'll talk about this later, we'll show something about it. But if you use predictive lap timing and you say, I'm going to try this gear through this corner 3 times the best I can do it, and I'm going to try an alternate gear through this corner 3 times the best I can do it, and I'm going to practice for a session or 2 in each before I try it, I can look down at a simple number, plus or minus, and if it's minus, I'm gaining. It's better. If it's plus, it's not as good. So all of a sudden, I'm not having to trust my butt or my eyes or my fingers, but I can see it. So yes, this higher gear doesn't feel as good. The motor's not roaring. I don't feel that big push at the base of my back, but by golly, I'm going through this corner quicker. And that is one of the great things about this technology. Use simple, basic money channels. I'd rather use speed versus distance is money. Every track we go to has a specified length in feet. VIR is around 17,300 feet. Well, if I know how fast you are going at any given point, I can say, yes, you have room. No, you don't have any more room. So not only am I trying to find improvement, I'm also trying to find the areas where I can stand pat, where I should not push, where I already am doing well. Let's find and focus, let's jettison the 80% I'm doing well, find and focus the 20% that can really make a difference. Forces acting on the car. Your only connection with the Mother Earth is those 4 tire contact patches, no bigger than that in a GT3 RS or that in an older car. And the issue with the contact patch and your governance of the weight distribution on that and how much of the contact patch you use, grip you use at any given time will tell you where you can push and where you don't. And we can talk a lot more about this, and I'm glad to talk to anybody who wants to email me after this on simple ways to use simple tools. And I don't care whether it's an AIM, a V-Box, a Garmin Catalyst, a Motec, a Cosworth ICD. If you can access this information, you can learn where and how to go quicker. And it's not my opinion. It is just what happened. It is a replay of what happened. Next slide, please. So we know that not every best corner is done on your quickest lap. We know that in a longer session, you can ace a series of corners and know that you did a really good job. And who knows, you may run into traffic later on that lap that completely kills this huge, nebulous, really imprecise number called lap time. If I could figure out where I'm doing really, really well and where I nailed the corner and watch that and review it and commit it to memory, I can go out and do it again. So one of the things, this business of predictive lap timing, which is not a lap time itself, although it can be a predicted lap time, it's just a number, gaining or losing. If you're losing time, if it's a minus number, you are quicker to that given point than you were on your previous best that session. And for that reason, it is a pat on the back. It is a reward. It is a carrot sitting out in front of you. So those moments of flowing brilliance, do more of those. And I have spent a lot of time with Bruce Grobman and Cliff Walzer, who is from Potomac, in his new 991 GT3, going over areas of their performance and finding and focusing the areas where they just nailed it and said, do more of this. Simple video review can pay big dividends. Just simply watching video, especially with numbers on it, intelligent video, if you come back in and you look at your video right away, what happens is you will see 80 to 85% of what you watch will be exactly as you remember it. But 15 to 20% will not be as you remember it. You'll say, man, I don't remember missing that apex so much, or boy, I really flubbed that shift, or man, I got behind on this corner and then it screwed the rest of the corner complex for me. I need to make sure that I nail that first left-hand corner before the next right to be in the proper place. So just a simple video review can furnish you with pearls, 1 or 2 things that you pick out of there before the next session. You can do this in 5 or 10 minutes after you come out of the car. Look at those pearls and say, oh, okay, I'm going to focus on just working on this section. And that hyper-focus, that concentration that you bring to the next session, that dedicated practice is really, really important. Passive and active tools. So this part of the objective skill measurement is this technology that records information. And tells you what you did. That is a passive tool. An active tool is a right seat instructor. An active tool is somebody talking to you, giving you a stream of feedback, saying, brake earlier, brake harder, get to that apex, more power sooner. So up until now, all these things, AIM, Motec, VBox, Cosworth, everything, tells you what happened and can tell you a little bit of what's going on in the car. The folks at Garmin, and I'm not getting paid for this, but I am a dealer, have built into a 7-inch Android tablet some artificial intelligence, a device that learns what you do, picks the areas of best performance, and encourages you to do more. It doesn't ask you to throw it against the wall and hope it sticks. It only measures what you did and say, hey, do more of this, it's working. Or if you overcook it, if you charge the corner and it measures that you're coming out of a corner slower than you have in the past, it will remember that and tell you by Bluetooth, a voice, or over your PCM in your modern Porsche, in a female voice, brake 50 feet earlier. Get the car under control and hit the apex. And the reason it's able to do that is it's analyzing, cutting up the track into pieces, measuring your individual best performance, and feeding you constant in-car feedback. It also has a post-session analysis that takes all the squiggly lines and all the video that's recorded and just gives you a ever-changing prioritized list of 3 things you need to work on. Will it work me out of a job? Probably not, because it's not going to tell you the underlying theory and foundation that all drivers need to have before they begin to bump up their speed and their skill level. But it will give you feedback that experienced solo drivers can use, especially those of you who are white group, blue group, black group, and red group. It will give you the feedback that you need to reinforce all the stuff you're doing well now and not continue going down the wrong road. Do I believe everything it tells me? Hell no. I have to process the information. I'm driving the car, not it. So it's really important to bring a sense of perspective to this, but it's fascinating to see, as someone who has spent 40 years telling people more gas, less brake, to have a little box do the same thing, only with more detail and more good information. Next slide. So I just want to, I don't want to turn this into a data class. I just want to show you what happened between 2 sessions, a morning session, a couple of sessions in between, and an afternoon session with Bruce. And I'm bragging on Bruce because Bruce really made continual improvement. It's very unusual for a driver to lop off and continue to get quicker and quicker, and then get quick and stay quick. It means that they are consistent with their performance in the car. He is shooting tighter groups of skill executions now than he was at the beginning, and that's what's allowing him to be consistent and do the same thing. What we are looking at is we are looking at pulling a video card out of a Smarty Cam, which many drivers have in their cars, and they use it to watch the video, but you can actually use a small program that AIM has called Race Studio 3 Analysis. You don't need to download data from the Solo. You don't need to do any of that. You just put the card in your laptop, you open up one video file, you open up the other video file, and voila, it compares one lap against another lap. And there are 2 aspects to it. There's the video on the right side, and there's a strip chart on the left. And we don't really even need the middle strip chart, which is TPS, throttle position sensor. I like it. If you have access to that information, it's helpful, but it's not necessary. It gives added insight into the driver's mind. If somebody is able to fully depress the throttle and go up to the very top, that 100%, and all the little dips you see, all the little sharp dips you see on the back straight at the 10,000 mark to about the 14,000 mark, that distance is on the bottom of the screen. You see that those little momentary dips are shifts. And in the green, he actually takes longer to shift. In the red, he's shifting more quickly. But the most important thing is he is feeling good about it, life, because more of the lap is at 100% throttle. Very simple. This is just a record of what happened. That's all it is. To me, the money channel is the top. GPS speed is up and down. High speed on the upper graph is a trace that is higher. Low speed, we have 4 really low speed corners, one at about 1,500, one at about 4,000, one at about 10,000, one at about 14,000. And that is on VIR, turns 1, turn 4, turn 7, and turn 14, or sorry, Oak Tree. So right there is the end of the back straight where the cursor is now. The lowest point just before that is Oak Tree, leading on to the back straight. The lowest point before that, that's turn 4. And then that little shelf to the right is turn 5, where everybody has to breathe out of it in order to finish turning right onto the bridge straight. So one of the things that we want to know is where in the comparison of these laps is he finding the difference between a 2:07.4 and a 2:05.5? Where is he finding that difference? So on the bottom strip chart, time compare, any time between, say, the 4,000 and the 10,000, that line is roughly level. Okay, the line is not going up and it's not going down. But between 2,000 or 2,500 and 4,000, there's a big difference there. Okay, so between 2,000 and 4,000, you see the trace go up. And what that means is he's making half of the difference, time difference between the two laps in the turn 3, turn 4 area, turn 2, turn 3, turn 4 area. And then if we go over to the 14,000 section, he's making the rest of the improvement from 14,000 all the way back to start finish, which is the vertical on the right-hand side. And you can actually see at the top of the screen the turn numbers. So we can see that it really starts in 14 and then makes a huge, sort of levels out in 15, makes a difference in 16, and finishes the job in 17. So just by comparing two simple laps, it was clear that it wasn't the whole lap. It was two areas that really made a difference. Turn 2, turn 3, and turn 4, and turn 14 roller coaster and hog pen. So this is a wonderful, just a simple way to look at two laps and say, boy, I really made a difference here and there. Next slide. So one of the things that we want to know is we don't necessarily need to know how fast we're going, the live speed. We don't even need to know the max speed. Now that's a max speed right there. We don't necessarily even need to know the lap timing. It is helpful to know how many laps we did in the session, but the real money is this predictive lap timing. So this is a V-box, and it has a little bar graph. And if you've watched Formula One qualifying, you know that when they cross a sector and it's a minus, then you're in really, really good shape. You're going better. So that is the purpose of this readout. If it is showing minus and that minus number is increasing, you are quicker and continually going quicker then the reference lap, which is usually the quickest lap you've done before in that session. And you can set a lot of these devices up to have somebody drive a car and index your performance off of that, but I don't recommend that. I recommend you always compare yourself to yourself. Pros can get in cars, set a reference lap, but without the underlying foundation knowledge, comfort, confidence, and skill, it is not realistic for you sometimes to throw it against the wall and hope it sticks. So it is more important to compare yourself, to carefully devise a prime plan through a particular corner and an option plan, and keep doing the live compare between a prime approach, a particular line, gear, throttle application, and an option, which is enough different so that you can say this is a different approach, a different trajectory, a different turn in, a different application of throttle. So I hear there is nothing more valuable than track time. We are not on the track as often as we would like to be. So every lap counts. That is why this dedicated practice really needs to be approached. And that is why you need to have a plan when you go out on the circuit, and you need to gauge your progress from one detailed plan to another detailed plan. I hear so many drivers say, well, I was just trying things. What things? What things were you trying? Well, I was just trying things. Wrong answer. You've really, really got to say, I'm going to work on turn 11 and turn 12. And I'm going to get to the very outside edge of the road, and I'm going to turn the wheel quicker so that I'm pointed down the road so that I can finish my application to wide open throttle sooner and get a better launch down the back straight. Then you're going to measure it and you're going to look at it. And I think with that, we are at the end of my prepared remarks, and I appreciate your patience to my enthusiasm. Obviously, I am a multi-line driver and car performance measuring technology dealer. If you have any questions, any interests, talk about pros and cons. No one system does everything we'd all like it to do. There's no silver bullet, just like there's no silver line. I do custom private driver performance analysis at VIR, and I also do it remotely. So people often upload their data. Steve Korodamus did this last year and got a lot out of it and was able to go quite a bit quicker after I provided him 20 pages of observations and opportunities for improvement from 2 videos and 2 data files that he sent me. So part of me wants to, my mission in my business now is to help drivers coach themselves using this technology just as an objective valuation on what they're doing. So with that, I think I am just about done, and I'm sorry to yell and get excited and spit all over the screen, but I appreciate it.
Peter, thank you very much. Great stuff. So we have time for some questions. One that's come up, you talked about the 5 steps in braking. If you could go through those again, because not all of us picked up on that, including me. So
okay, so I'm gonna talk a little bit about this because braking is not only an area where most drivers are most inconsistent, but it is also an area that if not done well and you try to go quicker into a corner, you can get hurt. So the number one issue is to perfect the ability to slow the car closer to its capability than your perception of what you need to slow the car. I'm not talking about brushing the brake for particular areas of the track, like South Bend at VIR or turn 4 at Thunderbolt or a number of, a variety of different places. Turn 10 at Watkins Glen. I'm talking about long sustained braking where you need to get rid of between 80 and 110 miles an hour. And that is, that could be turn 1 at Watkins Glen, turn 1 at Road Atlanta, turn 1 at VIR, a lot of different places. So what I want people to understand is they need to create a consistent rate of slowing, deceleration. That is the meat, the middle of the 5 steps of braking. But the first step of braking is how the platform of the car is oriented when you apply the brake. Most drivers inadvertently, they don't even know it, get out of the throttle well before they have to shower down on the brakes, especially in a fast car, going fast. When you let off the gas, but don't apply the brake, the car is floating. It doesn't like it. It's not being told what to do. And so the first order of business, phase 1 of the braking, is to accelerate right up to a point and brake. So the transition between wide open throttle and the application of brake is as quick and clean and efficient as possible. That's step 1. The second step is how fast, when you come off the gas and go onto the brake, do you get to maximum pressure, which should, if the braking system is working correctly, slow the car quickly. Some softly sprung cars really pitch. The nose dives and you really feel it. So you can't just whack it, because then it goes bam and it bounces back up and becomes unstable and the rear end is swirling around, and that's uncomfortable. So you have to squeeze on the brake to slow the transition forward. This is part 2. Okay, if you have a purpose-built race car, 718 Club Sport, a 991 Cup car, 992 Cup car, which I was fortunate enough to work with a couple of days ago in preparation for the test at Sebring tomorrow and Tuesday, you can really, we're talking about 3.5 tenths of a second from the time the driver is applying the brake to maximum pressure and maximum deceleration. Whereas I'm seeing in advanced solo drivers, more than a second from the time they apply the brake to the time the car is slowing at the maximum deceleration rate. Your goal is to quicken that transition and make more efficient the transition from going to slowing. That's number 2. Third, you're in the meat. When you are slowing down, how many of you have noticed or noted in others when a 3-pedal car driver blips the throttle, inadvertently the nose comes up and then they brake again. And they blip the throttle and the nose comes up and they brake again. And what that comes from is they are not prioritizing braking. They are prioritizing the blip. They're saying, if I blip, I've got to get the blip right. When they ignore the fact that they need to keep the ball of their foot on that brake pressure and then roll their foot to the right against the throttle to keep the deceleration rate high and steady. So it's really important, the third phase of braking, to keep the nose down and slow as quickly as you possibly can, as long as you are in a straight line. The fourth step is where and how where and how quickly you start releasing the brake, because it should take longer, much longer, to release the brake than it takes to apply it. And I don't think a lot of drivers think, what is the ratio between how quickly I apply and how slowly I release? Is it 1 in 10? Is it 1 in 20? Is it 1 in 100? That's number 4, is where and how quickly you begin to release the brake. The fifth and final phase of braking is where is the car pointed when I finally come off the brake? And is it a place where I can begin and continually progress to wide open throttle? That's the fifth part. So does that answer your question, Bill? Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's very good. That's I think exactly right. The other thing you mentioned early on, 360 awareness, but didn't spend a lot. If you could talk a bit more about how drivers can improve their 360 awareness, how you coach people to become, more aware of what's going on around.
Oh, we talk about vision all the time. This is something that's done in the classroom all the time. This is done by every good instructor to remind their student, and every good solo driver to remind themselves before they get in the car to keep my eyes up and moving. So to develop a scan, a repetitious, consistent movement of the eyes is really important in developing a 360 awareness, or you are the sun and the other cars are the planets. Knowing at what rate people are closing on you, at what rate you are closing on others, with the sole goal of not being surprised by anything. I had a situation where Bruce was going pretty good. Some guy decided that he was going to present himself right next to him in the right turn going onto the North Course cut through. I think Bruce lost track of him for a second going up the hill, and at the last moment turned his head to the right and had to open the steering wheel so that they could both coexist and continue. Now, he knew that car was there, but he lost track of it for a moment, and its relative position to him changed, and that surprised him. So not only do you have to register where cars are, you have to register the rate of change in relation to them. And the way to do it is to look at your left mirror, look at your center mirror, look forward, look at your right mirror, look forward, look at your rear view mirror, look forward. Keep your eyes up and moving all the time. Really important.
Great. Question back on the braking. Can that technique be practiced on the simulator?
Yes, it can. Sure can.
Okay. And a question on the heel toe downshift. Somebody said the newer cars have auto blip features. Is that a help, or how to take advantage of that? I guess would be the other way to put it.
It's interesting. I would say that a lot of the most modern cars do that very nicely. The car's not pitch sensitive. I am very, very impressed with the factory installed auto blips. As a matter of fact, I was complimenting somebody or another person on what a great downshift, and they were like, "Oh, I'm not doing that." I went, "Wow, that's great. Good technology."
Okay, good. Last week you mentioned something called the go, no-go switch. I wonder if you would mention that again, and how people should think about, or when they should think about applying that.
So I'm going to tell you that one of the people that I spent a lot of time in the classroom with and working with drivers at racing schools is a fellow named Ron Zitza, who runs a business called Zotz Racing down in Orlando. He's a Porsche shop. His son Eric is doing a very good job with his business now, and he's a good driver and a good young man coach himself. Ron shared with me a program or a system that keeps me out of trouble, because I am aggressive in the car, especially in a competition environment. I wouldn't say I'm overly aggressive. I don't hit too many people or hardly anybody, but I go fast, and I am able. I don't look like a race car driver, but I'm able to go pretty quickly and win a bunch of races. The issue, however, is the faster you go, the more likely it is that your brain has an inability to process the information. So, what really needs to happen is every driver has to have a system that helps them recognize early enough things going wrong before it's too late. And that is why there are more incidents in DEs and club level racing and even track day driving, because most incidents are not the result of any one thing. It's actually a cascade of failures that finally reaches a point where the driver can no longer do anything to fix it. So what Bill was talking about was something that Ron Zitzik taught me. He called it his go, no go system. And a go, no go system is at any given point in the corner or at the approach to the corner, are you able to go to the next control input? So for instance, at turn 4 at VIR, am I going to make it to the inside? Am I not going to run out of road on the outside? No, I'm not going to run out of road. I can go back to power. So if I am coming into turn 1 and I am looking at the apex to my right, well, I'm still going straight before I turn in, and I find myself crabbing in inadvertently because my hands are following my eyes, and I look back straight and I realize, man, I'm gonna early apex the heck out of this. So what do? I do what Mario Andretti tells me. Mario Andretti says, how many straightaways are there in a corner? And I said, how many? He says, an infinite number. And I went, now that's pretty slick. So if I'm in trouble, I just open the wheel, go straight, settle down, get it, settle down, pick back up. The lap is ruined, but I haven't fallen off the track. I haven't hit anything. If I had recognized earlier that I was early apexing, I would have said, no, I'm not going to continue accelerating. I'm going to open the steering wheel, get the car straight, because the weight will be more distributed. I can slow quicker in less distance, get the car woed up, and then go on my merry way. So a lot of people get into accidents where they apply sudden power, the car steps out. Then what happens is they are late in recognizing that, so they keep applying power and counter steer the other way. And then the tank slapper gets bigger and bigger and bigger. There is no question that once you lose control, more power just means you're going to hit whatever you were going to hit harder. So this whole idea of go, no go, if you've lost control, if it's not the way you expect, if it's not the way it should be, fail, no go.
Great. Terrific. A question, given the question is, from all the time you've been coaching, what's the biggest thing you would recommend that all drivers work on based on the experience you've had with obviously a great number of drivers? Now, you probably answered some of this, but I'm curious the answer as well.
Well, that's interesting, Bill. And honestly, in my opinion, that's probably the best question I've gotten today. The reason why is because I think that the HPDE model is something that we are all well aware of and that we've all been practicing for a very long time. I think one of the things that drivers, especially those drivers who really want to advance, who really want to get comfortable being slightly uncomfortable. What I said, drivers, the best drivers are drivers who want to become comfortable being slightly uncomfortable. That means moving the car underneath them, sliding the car. I mean, I love watching Matt Muller drive. And the reason why is because, not just because his cat likes him, but because his ass is so well calibrated that he controls proactively the rate and the amount of the slip angle at any given point. He also drives consciously slightly over the edge, knowing that his butt gyro will pick up an excess to get fixed. That go, no go, his go, no go is really finely tuned so that it stops the build of yaw and slip and rotation. So the reason I keep saying, the HPDE model is well known is when a driver, especially an advanced solo or instructor driver, wants to go play in high-level club racing or entry-level professional racing, and I ask them if they've been to a professional driving school or racing school, and they say no, I say the first thing you need to do is go to a high-level professional driving school with car control exercises. So I think the number one thing drivers need more practice in is properly taught, properly administered, properly facilitated car control exercises, specifically skid pad training and autocross training, to begin to calibrate your butt to the level, and you may never get to the level Matt is. And I'm not blowing smoke on it. I've watched hundreds of thousands of drivers in 40 years from a professional aspect, and he's among the very best. And part of it is because he has confidence, he has comfort, and he has commitment. No driver can have the commitment to improve unless they have the confidence that they can pick up the loss of traction early enough to fix it. Most drivers, when they feel a loss of traction, stop it. They go, whoa, no, I don't want to do that. Yes, you do want to do that. You want the car to slide. You want the car to move. And, Matt and I have also talked about the value of simulators in training your eyes. In a static simulator, a simulator that doesn't move, you don't need the simulator to move to see the view shift like you're sitting in the passenger seat of a green group student who's just lost the rear. You can see it. And sometimes on simulators, people, even who are not familiar with simulation training, do the right thing. They counter steer. They do the right thing. So I would say the number one thing you can do is car control exercises. In real life is a great way to do it. Dirtfish, Team O'Neill up in Vermont, fantastic program. The Porsche driving experience in Barber, superb. They have a slick pad down at the Porsche Center in Atlanta near Hartsfield. Dirtfish in the Pacific Northwest, fabulous school, worth spending the money if you're going to really drive at a very, very high level. But car control and properly coached, trained, and administered skid pad training is number one, I think.
Great. A question that's come up in the past relates to trail braking, and just to pick up on kind of what you were saying about, the car rotating or sliding or whatever, obviously trail braking gets defined differently by different people, but the simple definition is I'm carrying the brakes, past the turn in into the corner. And some people have a narrower definition, but Randy Popes told us a year ago that the biggest reason to trail brake is to keep my right foot away from the gas pedal until it's time to go to the gas pedal. So if you would talk through kind of, for drivers with lots of experience, that whole, how do you teach or communicate about trail braking?
So the biggest response we got last weekend on our instructor presentation was a similar question, which is, do you believe that trail braking, carrying the brakes past the point of steering input, well past, should be taught to, one particular procedure should be taught to all students, regardless of experience and skill level? And I said, yes, I think they should. I don't believe that it's right to teach new drivers a particular way of slowing the car and turning the car, and then two run groups or one run group later, graduation later, saying, oh, forget about that braking in a straight line stuff. I'm asking you to hold your foot on the brake until after you turn the wheel, because we want to keep the weight on the nose, because we want to help the car turn, and because we want the car to do more of the work. We want you as a driver to hand off some of the turning to the car. And that is my definition of trail braking. So trail braking was a concept that was put together by the first instructors and specifically by Skip Barber. It is his gift because he was the first person, Jim Russell, who taught all of the professional drivers up to and including Bondurant and Phil Hill and all the guys that ran in the late 60s, early 70s, said break in a straight line, get back on the power. Well, you could do that with a bias ply car, because as soon as you turned the wheel, the bias ply tire would generate a slip angle and you would slide or drift through a corner, not losing speed, maintaining speed. But with the advent of the wider, stickier radial tire, the car went where you turned it. It didn't assume, it stayed stuck. It wouldn't come unstuck. And the biggest thing we want to see as a skill level for drivers as they progress and improve, especially in the intermediate and advanced group, is we want to see the car become progressively more unstuck, even if it's just for a moment, and then progressively longer and longer and longer and longer. Trail braking, the word trail braking, has been so misused that Skip Barber no longer calls it trail braking. They call it brake turning. So that brake turning is a more accurate assessment of braking in a straight line, turning such that the center of friction and the center of rotation is on the outside front tire contact patch. Trail braking is just simply turning the wheel while you have your foot on the brake, extending the brake zone into the turn-in, which is, I think, very important. You can do this with a novice driver, and you can start doing it yourself without adding more risk, because you're not so concentrated on, you're not going really fast and hitting the pedal really hard. You're doing this incremental, dedicated approach. However, the goal is, especially in the slowest, longest corners, to get the car to pivot on the outside front tire until it is pointed in the direction you want to go, and then apply the power and be able to quickly and efficiently and progressively apply full throttle. Racers, so Randy is right. And Randy is, I have a great time with Mike Levitas of TPC. Randy Popes and I run an advanced driver clinic for the Audi Club here at VIR every April for 2 days, and it's insane. I mean, we do a real track walk. We do nonstop seminars, all three of us. It's crazy. But the wonderful thing is that people do think that they are trail braking when they come to these advanced clinics, and they find out that they are not really rotating the car. They are applying the brake, they are turning the wheel, but they're not using the concentration of the weight on the outside front tire to pivot the car in a planned, proactive, measured way to get the car lined up for exit and the pulling of the trigger of these big guns, these 991 GT3s, RSs, cup cars. I mean, the best thing you can do is get them pointed in the direction you want to go and bam, go.
Okay, that's great. I think I'm looking to see if we have any other questions, but I think we're also getting close to the end here. So
You gave me a lot of time today. I appreciate it.
yeah, well, it's been fun. You know, I've taken a whole bunch of notes here, and I hope other people did as well. So Peter, thank you very, very much. Tom, if you'd like to say a few words to wrap up, and then I'll have one last comment for folks.
Yeah, no, Bill, thank you. Peter, I thoroughly enjoyed this. I hope everybody else has. I know Bill was taking notes, but I'm going to take my notes later because I want to watch this again. But thank you very much. I hope we get to see you again at our VIR session at the end of October. I know I thoroughly enjoyed it. I got a lot of feedback from the people from last week, and I'm sure I'm going to get a lot more positive feedback this week. It's been great, and thanks for doing this for us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. And just one other thing, Bill, thank you for all your work. I know everybody who's on the call at the beginning, so everything that Bill has put together, it's a lot of work. Bill puts in a ton of time, and Bill, thank you. And when you see Bill personally, thank him yourself. We really appreciate it, Bill, for all the work you do for us.
Tom, thanks for the nice words. I appreciate that. I just want to remind people to send me an email so I can send you a survey and send you a copy. So you have a link to the information we had today. The YouTube recording will be available. And when you send me your email, I'll send you that link as well. But because like Tom, I'm going to listen to this again myself. I listened to a good bit of last Sunday, at least a second time, in some places a third. And so again, Peter, thank you very much. Thanks to everyone for attending today. And we hope to see everyone very soon at the track.